إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. أما بعد، يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. ثم أما بعد، الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام والسنة. All praise and thanks belong to Allah for guiding us to Islam and for guiding us to the Sunnah. We continue going over the tremendous book by the Fadilat Shaykh Al-Allama Imam bin Baz Rahimahullahu Ta'ala. The book which is entitled Durus al-Muhimma li'amat al-Ummah, important lessons for the general masses of the Ummah, for every Muslim. We have reached the sixth lesson, and that is dealing with the shurut al-salah, the conditions and prerequisites for the prayer. قال Imam bin Baz رحمه الله تعالى الدرس السادس, the sixth lesson, شروط الصلاة, the conditions of the prayer. شروط الصلاة هي تسعة, the prerequisites and the conditions of the prayer, then they are 9. الإسلام, العقل, التمييز, رفع الحدث, إزالة النجاسة, ستر العورة, دخول الوقت, استقبال القبلة, والنية. The conditions of the prayer, then they are 9. The first of them is al-Islam, Islam. The second is the intellect, that the intellect has to be present, a person has to be sane. The third is tamyiz, that a person has to have reached the age of discretion. The fourth, it is the removal of hadath, meaning that a person, they enter into the state of purity. So they remove being in a state of impurity, which means that they come into a state of purity, and that will either by making wudu for the minor impurity, to make wudu, or tayammum in the absence of water, or to make a ghusl if the impurity is the major state of impurity, by way in which they will have to take a ghusl. The next is the removal of impurities. The removal of impurities, whether that be from one's person or from one's clothes, so on and so forth. The next is the covering of the awrah, the covering of the awrah. The next is the entering of the time, the entering of the time of the salah. The next is facing the qibla, facing the qibla. And the ninth is the intention, the intention. All of these have to take place prior to beginning the salah. Naam. And if they are not there, then the salah, it will not count. It will not be valid. قال فضيلة الشيخ عبد الرزاق بن شيخ عبد المحسن العباد البدر حفظهم الله تعالى. He says, in explaining this particular section, he says, الصلاة هي أعظم الأركان الإسلام. That the salah, it is the greatest of the pillars of Islam. بعد شهادتين, after the shahadatain, after the shahada. So after the shahada, the greatest pillar, and we have went over the pillars, then it is the salah. The salah. So the salah, it is tremendous, bila shakku bila raib. Naam. وأهم أمور العبد, the most important affair of the abd is the salah. The most important action of the slave, then verily it is the salah. Naam. And this is a point and a principle that I want everyone who hears my voice to know and to understand, because this is key and vital for their success in this world and the next. Naam. In this world and the next. And that is that they have to understand that the very most important affair of theirs, meaning from their actions, then it is the salah. The salah. The salah is more important than work. It is more important than school. It is more important then, and we can keep going on. The list goes on and on and on. The salah is of extreme importance. Often, individuals, they will put off their salah, not pray it. Why? Because they're at work. What's more important, work or salah? Salah. Right? They will put off praying their prayers. Why? Because they're at school. What's more important for you? School or your salah? Of course, the salah. Naam. A person will say this. Naam. The person will say this and they will admit this and they will say, yes, it's the salah. But yet you find that they will delay their salah, put off their salah, not pray their salah. Why? Because of work, because of school, so on and so forth. Naam. So when this is the situation, your actions don't coincide with your speech. You're saying one thing, but then you're acting in a manner which is contrary, and this is not good. This is a recipe for your destruction. That you put everything in front of your salah is a recipe for your destruction. Your salah is the most important of your actions. The Shaykh, he mentions, he says, فَمَنْ حَافَظَ عَلَيْهَا وَحَفِظَهَا حَفِظَ دِينَهُ, that whoever preserves and safeguards their prayers and they protect their prayers, then they will be safeguarding and protecting their religion. You see the connection? Right? You see it? They're connected. And this is how things are. Things are not isolated, but they are interconnected. So you'll find that the salah has a direct bearing upon a person's religion. Has a direct bearing upon a person's religion. Because a lot of times people, they make claims. And one of the most famous claims you hear people say, well, I have a good heart. قلبي أبيض. You know, I have a good heart, I have a pure heart, so on and so forth. And then usually they say this as a defense for themselves when they're caught slipping. Then they'll say in response and in defense of themselves, but I have a good heart. Yes, this, that, and that. Yeah, I did this, I said that, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. However, I have a good heart. How? How can your heart be possibly good and you are neglectful of your prayers, or you don't pray your prayers? How can your heart be good and you don't pray? It's not possible. Um, how can you say, but I have good deen, and you are lacking on your prayers? No. If you safeguard and protect and preserve your prayers, then your deen will be safeguarded, protected, and preserved. But if you, as the Shaykh mentions, he says, وَمَنْ ضَيَّعَهَا, but the one who loses it, the one who loses out on the salah, he abandons the salah, loses out on the salah, neglectful of his salah or her salah, كان لما سواها من عمله أشد إضاعة or إضاعة, then whatever else from his deeds, they're going to be even more neglected. That whoever neglects his or her prayers, then the rest of their deeds will be even more neglected. Excuse me. وهي عمود الإسلام, and the salah, it is the supporting pillar of Islam. فقبول سائر الأعمال موقوف. استمعوا. قبول سائر الأعمال موقوف على قبول الصلاة. The acceptance of the rest of your deeds is dependent upon your salah being accepted. The acceptance of the rest of your deeds, from fasting, from giving charity, from being righteous to one's parents, so on and so forth. The acceptance of the rest of your deeds is dependent upon the acceptance of your salah. فَإِذَا رُدَّتْ عَلَيْهِ سَائِرُ الْأَعْمَالِ, and if the salah is rejected, if it's not accepted, then the rest of the deeds will not be accepted. Now, if the salah is not accepted, then the rest of the deeds will not be accepted. Do you see now how the shaitan tricks, plays with, and deceives those individuals whom he has convinced them that there is virtue for them in fasting in Ramadan, although they don't pray. They have abandoned their prayer. But he tells them, fast in Ramadan, so they feel good about themselves, and you're not really that bad because at least you fast Ramadan, so on and so forth. But if a person that fasts Ramadan, but they don't pray the salah, then what? Their fasting doesn't count. The fasting doesn't count. You abandon the prayer, there's no fast for you. على كل حال, as the ulama they explain, they mention. نعم. على كل حال. وهي أول فروض الإسلام. The salat is the first obligation of Islam, meaning the first obligation of Islam after the shahadatain. Now, so I want you to understand the context in which it is being mentioned, so it's not misunderstood. It is the first obligation after, meaning after the shahadatain. Now, وهي آخر ما يفقد من الدين. And the salah is the last thing that will leave from the religion, meaning once the salah leaves, then the religion is gone. When the salah leaves, the religion is gone. وَلَا يَسْتَقِيمُ الدِّينُ الْمُسْلِمِ. The individual's Islam, it will not be correct. It will not be established. It will not stand. Naam, without the salah. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, الْعَهْدُ الَّذِي بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَهُمَ الصَّلَاةِ فَمَنْ تَرَكَهَا فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. That the, how would you say? That the covenant or the distinction between us and between them, meaning the kuffar, is the salah. And whoever has abandoned the prayer, فَقَدْ كَفَرَ, then he has disbelieved. فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. This is tawqeed. This is an emphasis. Now, whoever has abandoned the salah has disbelieved. So, if there's no salah, the deen cannot stand. If a person abandons the prayer intentionally abandons the prayer, so on and so forth, then the deen does not stand. And we know there's an ikhtilaf amongst the ulama as relates to those who abandon the prayer out of laziness, right? Um, However, what the ulama agree upon is that those who abandon the prayer because they say they don't have to pray, or that what they're doing and not praying is fine for them and perfectly acceptable, and they're still in good standings, and so on and so forth. Whoever leaves off the prayer intentionally, arrogantly, obstinately, then they all agree this person is a kafir, no doubt, right? Like, as far as and then you have others from the ulama, they say that a person who leaves the prayer out of laziness, some of the ulama say they are kuffar as well. Others from the ulama, they say no, not necessarily kuffar, just in mere and purely by the abandoning of the prayer. However, so I want you to understand, yani, the whole of the picture. However, the ulama, they mention those who say that if a person does not pray, they do not become a kafir automatically. They agree that an individual who has abandoned the prayer has fallen into something that is extremely dangerous. You have from the ulama like Sheikh Salih Abdis al-Sheikh Ta'ala, who mentions that not praying within itself is kufr, as the texts point to. However, if a person stops praying, they do not become a kafir automatically. Just like if a person falls into shirk, they do not become a kafir automatically. Why? Because those preventative factors have to be removed. For example, ignorance. Perhaps they did it out of ignorance, they didn't know. So if they did it out of ignorance, they can't become a kafir because it was out of ignorance, right? So on and so forth. They were forced into doing it, right? Then they're not a kafir because they were forced into doing an action of kufr, right? And the like. Okay. Also, the proofs and evidences must be established upon the person to let them know the severity of that in which they have fallen into. So the proofs and evidence must be established upon the person that the salah is wajib, so on and so forth, and the preventative factors removed. And if this is done and a person still persists upon not praying, then they become a kafir. Just like the person who has fallen into shirk, once the proofs and evidences are established against them and the preventative factors are removed, then they become a kafir. Naam. So even those ulama, they say, okay, they don't become a kafir automatically. They all agree that a person has fallen into something tremendously dangerous. Sheikh Salih, he says they have fallen into kufr, because not praying is kufr. So by not praying, they're falling into kufr. They're on the verge of becoming a kafir. The only thing between them and leaving Islam, the establishment of the hujjah and all of the preventative factors being removed. Is that the state you would like for yourself? Is that the situation you want to be in? Is that the state that you would like for your deen to be in? On the verge of? Do you want to be on the verge of? Right? I mean, if we were standing upon a skyscraper and we were on the roof of that skyscraper, to fall off of the roof is dangerous. You will die. Okay? You're not tethered. There's no safety harness, right? You're untethered. If you fall, you fall. That's it. You have no parachute, right? You're not gonna, jump off and then deploy your parachute. No. If you were in that situation, how close would you get to the edge? How close? If you were in that situation, you're on a high building, the tallest building in the world, and you were on the roof, no rope, no tether, no safety harness. How close would you get to the edge? How close would you get? The only thing that you would lose in that situation, if that situation came to its most horrible ending, is you will lose your life, right? If a person loses their salah, they lose their deen. person lose their deen, then for them is what? Is the hellfire forever. So, without doubt, losing of salah is more dangerous, it's more destructive than if a person were to lose their life. Why? Because we're all going to lose our lives anyway. We're all going to die anyway. Death is coming to us, whether we like it or not, whether we accept that fact or we reject that fact and deny it, we're in denial. It doesn't matter. We're going to die anyway. However, it's not about whether or not we're going to die, because we know we're going to die. It's about dying in a good way, dying in a good manner, dying while we are obedient unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what it means to have a good death, that a person dies while they were striving to be obedient unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They die while they have submitted themselves to Allah as Muslims. فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. And do not die, do not accept death, do not die except that you are Muslims. You are those who are submitting yourselves unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing that in which Allah ta'ala has commanded, and by staying away from that which Allah ta'ala has commanded you to stay away from, so on and so forth. Now, this is how we are to die. So losing of salat is not an option, just like standing at the edge of a skyscraper and potentially falling over and losing our life is not an option. It's not an option. The Shaykh, he says, وَلَا تَصْلِحُ أَعْمَالُ, and his actions will not be correct without what? Without the salah. Without the salah. وَلَا يَعْتَدِلُ سُلُوكُهُ فِي شُؤُونِ دِينِهِ وَدُنْيَاهُ, and his actions, they will not become appropriate, they will not become upright and moderate and appropriate, inside of his deen, nor inside of his dunya. حتى يقيم الصلاة, حتى يقيم هذه الصلاة, until he establishes or she establishes the prayer. Your life is out of whack. Your life is out of whack. You're going through trials and tribulations. Things are falling out of place. Everything seems to be in chaos. Refer back to yourself. Check yourself. Check your salah. Perhaps therein is a part of the problem. Check your salah, because your deen nor your dunya will become upright if your salah is not upright. Until you make your salah upright, then you will find that your affairs will fall into place. Allah Ta'ala says, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, and seek help in times of peril, in rough times, tough times, right? From those things, those tools by way in which you help get through those times and manage and cope and deal with those times is what? Is patience and the prayer. Patience and the prayer. So if the prayer is lacking and tremendously damaged, then how much more so, or how could you possibly expect everything else will fall in place and be fixed? على كل حال, until a person establishes their prayer على وجهها المشروع, upon the legislative manner in which it's supposed to be done, aqidatan wa ibadatan, with the proper belief, and the proper worship, that they're worshiping correctly in the way that they're supposed to be worshiping, muta'assiyan bir Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, imitating the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Until we do this, then we should have no hope that our affairs will ever be in order in reality. وإقام الصلاة لابد فيه من مراعاة لشروطها وأركانها وواجباتها, and والمجاهدة للنفس على تكميلها وتتميمها, and that the establishment of the prayer, that it is a must that an individual therein, they pay close attention. They pay close attention to the prerequisites of the prayer. They pay close attention to the prerequisites of the prayer, because the prerequisites of the prayer are a must in order for the prayer to be accepted. Now, Without the prerequisites, then the prayer it will not be accepted. So they have to pay very close attention to the prerequisites of the prayer. So in order to do that, you have to know what they are. كيف تقيم بالشيء تجهله. How can you establish something that you're ignorant of it? If you don't know what it is, how can you do it? How can you bring it? Now, so we have to have a concern to learn and to see what they are. Now, how well are we as relates to paying attention to that which is beneficial for us? Now, how much do you know? When I mean what you know, I mean how much knowledge do you have? I'm not talking about necessarily about the religion within itself, but in general, how many things do you know? You'll find people they know the stats of when this sports player, yani when they were drafted, what round they were drafted in, where they played their college, at where they played college, what team they played for in college, right? Who drafted them first, who traded them, so on and so forth. They know all this stuff, the stats and everything. They may know games and cheat codes and all of these things to play their games and conquer their virtual adventures and so on and so forth. Right? They'll know about this celebrity and how many films they appeared in and this one and what is their latest record and all this type of stuff. Right? And they know all this stuff. But and then you step back and you ask yourself, okay, that knowledge is that a knowledge that benefits you or a knowledge that hurts you? Is that something that you need to know, or is that something that you follow what I'm saying? Like, how important is that in the grand scheme of things? Like, okay, now you have things that are vital that you have to know. Do you know them? Those things that are vital, do you know them? Now, so if you know about some of these things of which was aforementioned, but you don't know what is the shurut of salah, or janafsak, check yourself, right? Because something's not right now. You're setting yourself up for loss. Your priorities are not right. If you know about these things and you don't even know that there was such a thing as prerequisites for the prayer, that's a problem. If you know the likes of these things, but you don't know what you are supposed to know from your aqidah, from your minhaj, that's a problem. This shows, and this is an illustration, that your priorities are not correct. Your priorities are not straight. Your priorities are awry. This shows that you don't have any true concern for yourself, but that you have been tricked and deceived by the dunya, which is nothing but plain amusement. But it is what? It is an illusion. It's not what's real. What's real is what comes after this. What real is what is forever. So you have become caught up in this temporal realm, distracted, right? Like an individual distracted by their reflection while they drown in the puddle. Does that even make sense? No, but this is what people are doing. If you know about these entertainers and sports figures and politicians and but you can't give me the same number of Sahaba that you know about them as intimately as you know about these kuffar, shame on you. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. Arun alayk. Ala kulli hal. We have to know if we're going to establish our prayer, then we have to know what are the prerequisites. We have to have a concern with the prerequisites so that we fulfill them. We have to know what are the arkan, what are those pillars of the prayer. So that we can what? So we can fulfill them, because without the pillars of the prayer, then the prayer won't count. We have to know what are the wajibat of the prayer. What are the obligatory things that we have to bring inside of the prayer, right? So on and so forth. We also have to know what are the recommended actions of the prayer. So we bring also the recommended actions of the prayer. And the Shaykh says, and so a person has to, and then with that, a person has to make jihad against themselves. Now, are you a mujahid? You should be. Right? Because you should be fighting jihad against yourself. You should be fighting jihad against shaitan. Shaitan is your enemy. This is the reality. Whether it's wartime or it's not wartime, shaitan is your constant enemy. You're constantly at war with shaitan. Even under a peace treaty, you're at war with shaitan. Shaitan, he's not going to stop whispering. Right? There's no treaty, no peace treaty with shaitan. There's no ceasefire with shaitan. It's always on with shaitan. He's always trying to attack you, trying to destroy you. So you're constantly at battle with shaitan. You're constantly at battle with the evils of yourself. Now, the evils of yourself that whisper to you the haram things, to do the bad stuff, and so on and so on. You're constantly at war with the evils of yourself. Okay? And being at wars with the evils of yourself will be not listening to those evil whispers that yourself may whisper to you, right? And we're not talking about shaitan. We know shaitan whispers. Okay, that's that battle, that fight. I'm talking about between you and you. You have to be constantly warring against yourself and resisting the evil that yourself is calling you to. And at the same time, you have to constantly be fighting against yourself and subduing yourself so that you do that which is good. And that you're consistent upon that which is good. And that you excel in doing that which is good. Right? So the fight is always on. So you should be a fighter against your evils of yourself and a shaitan. That's period. It's period. Okay? And before you can think about anything else, you gotta do that. You can't conquer yourself. You don't conquer nobody else. That's the reality. So conquer yourself. Work on conquering yourself. That's what you should be worrying about. Working on conquering yourself. Conquering the evils of your soul. So you have to fight yourself as relates to bringing and praying the prayer in the most complete of manners. Right? So bringing all of the recommended acts of the prayer, right? Being consistent and very diligent about the obligatory acts of the prayer and the pillars of the prayer, so on and so forth. The shurut of the prayer, you have to fight yourself and be very diligent upon doing this so that you may pray the prayer in the most complete manner. Bithnillahi ta'ala, which takes effort. وَلِهَذَا أَوْرَدَ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ, and due to this nature and due to this importance and due to this is what we need to establish the prayer. So for this, Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah ta'ala, he brought this dars here. نعم أورد هذا الدرس ودروسا بعدها. نعم بعده. He brought this class and those lessons, he brought this lesson and those lessons after this lesson. يعني تتعلق بمسائل متعلقة بالصلاة. With those, this lesson and the next following lessons, then they are connected to those issues that are attached to the prayer, that are connected to the prayer. Naam, فذكر الشروط. So he mentioned the prerequisites. Naam, the prerequisites, those things that take place before the prayer actually starts. And he mentioned the arkan, those pillars that take place in the prayer. The wajibat take place in the prayer. The sunan take place throughout the duration of the prayer. نعم نعم معاونة للمسلم على إقام الصلاة وأدائها كما ينبغي. The Sheikh bin Baz, he brought these lessons so as to help the Muslim, so that they may establish their prayer and they may perform their prayers upon a manner that is required. So this is why Sheikh bin Baz brought these lessons. And again, remember that this book is entitled Durusul Muhimma li'amat al-Ummah. Important lessons for every Muslim. Important lessons for every Muslim. Na'am. And bila shak wa bila rayb, a person praying their prayers and being diligent about their prayers and praying their prayers correctly, this behooves every Muslim. This is important to every single Muslim. They have to know these things. Now, so take an active role and invest in yourself, invest in your future by taking these lessons seriously, by learning what are the prerequisites of the prayer. The Shaykh, he mentions they are 9. So we should be able to know these 9 bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. Naam. What they are, what is entailed by them, so on and so forth. We should know. وَمُحَافَظَ عَلَى شُرُوطٍ, so that we may preserve and be diligent upon the preservation of the prerequisites, that we make sure that we are fulfilling these prerequisites, that we are fulfilling these conditions. And likewise the arkan, likewise the pillars, that we are fulfilling the pillars and that we are doing them the way that they're supposed to be done. We're doing them the way that the Prophet ﷺ told us how to do them. and the wajibat, and those obligatory aspects of the prayer. We make sure that we're doing them the way in which the Prophet ﷺ, he showed us and taught us how to do them. ثم يعني ومن ثم السنن والمستحبات, and also likewise what enters into this at the same time is that what is that we're trying to do those sunnah aspects of the prayer and those recommended aspects of the prayer the way in which the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us how to do them, so that we may implement the command of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he said صلوا كما رأيتموني أصلي, to pray as you see me praying. Pray as you see me praying. And Sheikh bin Baz, so that we understand a little better, so we may have some more appreciation for the Sheikh, his knowledge, his wisdom, the reason that he brought the shurut first, the Sheikh, he mentions. He says, وَقَدَّمَ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ كَلَامَ عَلَى شُرُوطِ, and he began this discussion about the salah by speaking about the shurut. لِأَنَّهَا تَسْبِقُ الصَّلَاةِ, because they come before the salah. So Sheikh bin Baz, he started by speaking about the shurut, because these shurut that are connected, these conditions that are connected to the salah, they are prerequisites or conditions, meaning they take place before you start to actually pray. So you have to talk about them first, right? وتكون بين يديها يعني تهيئا لها واستعدادا. And these prerequisites, what they do is that they will actually help a person get into the proper disposition and to prepare themselves for the prayer, right? That when a person is concentrating and focusing on the fulfilling of the conditions and the prerequisites, then this will help them get ready for the prayer, and it will help them be in the proper disposition for the prayer, the proper mind state for the prayer. ثم ذكر أركان, and then Sheikh bin Baz, he mentioned the arkan of the prayer next. نعم لأنها تزامن الصلاة, because the arkan of the prayer, they are connected to the prayer itself, because they take place within the prayer and are from the prayer itself. نعم. And why did he speak about the arkan before the wajibat? Why did he speak about the pillars of the prayer before the obligatory actions of the prayer? The Shaykh, he mentions, he says, وقدم الأركان على الواجبات, and he spoke about the pillars of the prayer before the obligatory aspects of the prayer, لأنها أكاد وأعظم, because the pillars of the prayer, they are greater, they are more significant, and they are greater, more of a priority, right? And then he explains why to give us further understanding. فإن الركن, because the pillars of the prayer, تبطل الصلاة بتركه, because the pillars of the prayer will render the prayer null and void if they are abandoned. If a person misses one of the pillars from the prayer, their prayer does not count. Their prayer, it does not count. نعم. وأما الواجب, but that which is from the obligatory or an obligatory action of the prayer, إذا ترك, if it is forgotten, right? فإنها يجبر يعني بسجود السهو, then it will be sufficed and it will necessitate that a person makes the prostrations of forgetfulness. Now, the prostrations of forgetfulness, they will fix if a person left off, forgot. When I mean left off, I mean forgot. Not intentionally left off, but they forgot a obligatory action of the prayer. Then the prostrations of forgetfulness, the two prostrations of forgetfulness, they will alleviate that and they will mend that and they will fix that hole. Okay? وَأَمَّا رُكُنْ فَلَا يُجْبَرُهُ شَيْءٍ. But as far as the pillar of the prayer, nothing could replace it, nothing could fix it, nothing could patch it over. So if you miss a pillar, you cannot bring the two prostrations of forgetfulness so as to fix that. You can't do that, because the two prostrations of forgetfulness, they will not alleviate and fix that which you have missed. بل لابد أن يؤتى به, but you have to bring the pillar. You have to bring the pillar. وَلَوْ تَرَكَ رُكْنًا, and if you leave off a pillar, وَسَجِدَ سَجْدَتَيْن, في آخر الصلاة. Whoever person leaves off a pillar and then they make two prostrations at the conclusion of their prayer, من أجل تركه, because he left off a pillar, فصلاته باطلة, then his prayer does not count. Then his prayer does not count, because the two prostrations, they will not fix and patch a pillar that has been left, but rather a person has to bring that pillar. I'll give you an example. From the pillars of the salah is sujood. Now, but if a person forgets one of the prostrations, throughout the duration of the prayer, okay? If they forget one of the prostrations in the first rak'ah, for example, right? So they go through the whole first rak'ah, they make sajda, they come up for the jalsa between the sajdatain, and then they get straight up. They don't make another sajda. Then they go on to pray the rest of the prayer. Then at the end, they bring and sajda to sahu, because they forgot to make sajda in the first rak'ah, or they forgot one of the sajdas in the first rak'ah. Does that prayer count? Does not count. Likewise, ruku' is from the pillars of the prayer. If a person prays and in one of the rak'ah he forgot the ruku', he got to make the ruku'. Now, and then he prays, did he make sajda to sahu at the end? Does that salat count? No, does not count. The salat it does not count. Why? Because the prostrations of forgetfulness, they will not mend a pillar that was missed. So it doesn't count. But rather they have to bring that pillar. They have to bring that pillar. So how does this happen? How do you bring a pillar that you forgot? Imam Sa'di, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions that if a pillar is missed, it is not sufficient that a person merely bring that pillar by itself. So in other words, if a person forgot a sajda, right, or they forgot to make ruku', they, at the end of the prayer, they can't just stand up, make ruku', and then sit back down and then taslim out. No. Or they can't make the sajda that they forgot and then, taslim out. No. But rather, they have to bring the whole rak'ah. Because if you forgot the ruku' and you just went straight from standing to sujood, or you forgot one of the prostrations and you stood up only after making one prostration, what happened is the whole of that rak'ah does not count. So you do not count it into the number of what you prayed. That rak'ah, now you have rendered it null and void, does not count. So as soon as a person forgets to make ruku' and they go straight to sujood, then that rak'ah is done. It doesn't count no more. Right? So that the whole rak'ah has to be reprayed. The whole rak'ah. Why? Because that one doesn't count. Right? That makes sense? That makes sense to everyone? So if a person stands up and they forgot to make a sajda, and then throughout the course of the prayer they realize, subhanallah, I only made one sajda, right? I forgot to make sajda in one of the rak'ahs. Then what they do, they subtract that rak'ah from the number of rak'ahs, and they complete the prayer like this. And then they will make the sajda to sahu due to that which was added to the prayer. Meaning almost a whole rak'ah was added to the prayer. So they will make sajda to sahu after the taslim. Now, this is what the early man they have mentioned, how you will fix missing a pillar of the prayer. So then it becomes extremely important that we know what are the rest of the pillars of the prayer. What are the rest of the pillars of the prayer, so that we know how to fix them in the event that we leave them. However, before doing that, before getting to the pillars, we have to deal with the conditions. So this is the reason why the Shaykh, he mentioned what he mentioned, and he brought them in the order that he brought them. That he brought the prerequisites, the conditions. Why? Because they take place before the prayer. And then he brought the arkan. Why? Because they, within the prayer, they are the most vital aspects of the prayer. So it's such as if they are missed, then the prayer doesn't count, and sajda to sahu will not fix them. And then after mentioning the arkan, he mentioned the wajibat. Why? Because the wajibat, they have to come, and if they are missed, they could be fixed by sajda to sahu. So he started like this, due to the aforementioned reasons. So inshallah ta'ala, we will get into the pillars of the prayer. First, going over what is a pillar, what does that mean, what is its definition, and then to get into what we can get into from the pillars of the prayer inside of the next class inshallah ta'ala. فنكتفي بهذا القدر وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وجزاكم الله خيرا.